how much did Frank Wright leaving the building affect the Philadelphia Eagles? Because some people say he's kind of the mastermind behind the play of Wentz and Foles and all that stuff. Is that a thing?
It's tough for me to say because I like Frank a lot as a person. I think a lot of people don't know, and I've told this story on the show, Jody. The Eagles wanted to fire Frank Reich after the 2016 season. Doug Peterson stepped in and essentially saved his job. And I know that's a lot of disconnect. And when I say saved his job, it's like, look, this guy's doing a really good job. And Jeffrey and Howie acquiesced and said, okay, we'll try it again. The rest is history. They won the Super Bowl. And then Frank obviously left of his own accord because he got the Indianapolis job. It was Doug Peterson's offense. It was always Doug Peterson's offense, and I don't think Doug Peterson gets the credit he deserves. It's astonishing to me.
Same here. Welcome to a different Birds 365, a special Birds 365, a bye-week edition of Birds 365. Thanks for those of you who came out tonight to Screwballs, right here in King of Prussia. Outstanding.
Screwballs. How about that, Jody?
If you haven't ordered dinner yet, I go with the pulled pork. It's the second consecutive time I've come in here, and it's been outstanding. Thanks for coming out tonight. We appreciate it greatly. In case you don't know, these would be your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald, along with my partner, John McMullen. And I got to tell you, JM, I haven't seen you in, 6 months, somewhere thereabouts?
Yeah. How about that? Pandemic. We're on together every day, but we never see each other. How about that? Well, that's lucky if we were in the studio together.
I see you on YouTube, just like everybody else on the planet, but I don't get to see you. You haven't gotten any uglier. Good for you.
Well, that's debatable. But I'm here. That's all that matters.
Oh, we know everybody came out to see our smiling, pretty faces tonight. Well, maybe not. Maybe they'd rather hear about the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, this is the bye-week edition. You and I have been dealing with it all week, and we will tomorrow as well on Birds 365, which airs live every day on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You should know by now, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eagles perfect bye-week timing now. Wasn't when we were going through week after week. When is the bye week going to hit us? Well, now that it's hit, they're an advantage over everybody else they're doing battle with.
Yeah, last bye week of the NFL season. This is it. This is the last bye week. All teams will play moving forward each and every week for the final 4 weeks. So you're right. I mean, it was difficult to get here, Jody, but now that the Eagles are here, it's a big advantage because you've got a couple guys banged up, most notably Miles Sanders, who wasn't able to finish again. So that's 2 consecutive games with his ankle injury. Jason Kelsey's banged up. And that extra week is going to really help when it comes to, and obviously most notably Jalen Hurts, who wasn't able to go against the New York Jets. So the hope is he will be back and healthy, or as close to healthy as you can be at this time in the NFL season. And that's big for the Philadelphia Eagles because you think about the team, the biggest hurdle between the Eagles and a potential playoff spot is the Washington football team. And they're going to play them twice down the stretch of the season, home and home series, as we know, starting at Lincoln Financial Field after the bye. But this weekend, Jody, Washington football team's got to play the Dallas Cowboys.
Correct.
And, hey, that's a difficult matchup. And they can't start thinking about the Eagles until they finish off with the Cowboys.
And the Eagles are already tentatively. They're not diving in. You don't want to get out of your weekly routine, but they've got some time on their hands. They're putting a little bit more extra effort into getting the Washington football team figured out before we get there. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. Yesterday was the first time that anyone had described his injury as a high ankle sprain. There are different grades of ankle sprains, and high ankle sprains are the worst of the group. Yeah. When he first got hurt, nobody used the word high ankle sprain. After he didn't play this week and sat, and Gardner Minshew went in and did what he did, somehow it got out that it was a high ankle sprain. They'd been able to keep it under wraps, but then all of a sudden it became a high ankle sprain. Some good reporting. I don't want to take away from the reporter that got it, but that's a lengthier injury. It's not a foregone conclusion that Jalen is going to be good to go come next Sunday.
No, it isn't. And it is pretty much a foregone conclusion that he's probably not going to be 100%. But I do expect him to go, and I do expect him to play.
You do?
Yeah. For one, I think the Eagles have been very consistent in, trying to limit this potential quarterback controversy. That really hasn't manifested itself, and I give credit to Eagles fans here. I thought it was going to manifest more than it did, especially after the way Gardner Minshew played against the New York Jets. I hear a lot of people saying, well, look at the opponent. And look, nobody knows better than you that the New York Jets are not the best opponent, but he played the way he played, and it is an NFL team. And they've won how many games? 3 games, Jody, the Jets?
Jets, yes. And 2 of them were actually pretty good wins over Tennessee before Tennessee got decimated by injuries.
Yeah.
And the Bengals, who were playing well at the time.
This isn't college, is my point. I mean, NFL teams, there's a lot of good players on the Jets. We saw some of them. Zach Wilson's arm talent. I'm still enamored with it. Elijah Moore, I think he's got a chance to be a really good receiver. They have some issues, obviously, and some injuries in the defensive backfield, which I think hurts. But, Quinnen Williams is a really good player, on and on and on and on. So the point I'm trying to make is all NFL teams have good players. And, they can jump up and bite you. And we saw that the week prior when the Eagles started their what do you call it in Vegas, residency at MetLife Stadium, essentially, where they were there in back-to-back weeks. New York Giants, you could argue, because of what went wrong that week and the fact that they fired Jason Garrett, all the issues, the Dave Gettleman news coming out, that, the least surprising thing in the world that he's not going to be back as their general manager. They were a team in disarray, and the Eagles weren't able to beat that team. So, getting back to the original point, Gardner Minshew played the way he played. It was the highest passer rating in Eagles franchise history since the NFC Championship game with Nick Foles. That's big stuff. That's big stuff. And it hasn't manifested. The controversy really hasn't developed and hasn't got going. And I find it kind of interesting, to be honest. And I want to hear your thoughts as to why and we both agree it hasn't lit up to where we thought it would be if Gardner Minshew played the way he did play.
Well, I for the most part, agreed with you. I might not have been as far out there. This is a foregone conclusion that there's going to be a controversy. But if you would ask me yay or nay after Gardner did what he did, I would have said yay. So I was surprised, too. Maybe not as surprised as you, but surprised. Here's why I think Eagle fans haven't gone overboard for Gardner Minshew. And again, this is a compliment to the Philadelphia Eagle fans. The Jets' defense does stink. I know you say everybody's got some good players, and you rattled up 3 or 4 names, 4 or 5 names. Very few of them on the defensive side of the ball. They've got some yet-to-be-determined, good, young, up-and-coming offensive players. Not so much on that. And you were the guy who talked me into Elijah Vera Tucker. I was ecstatic because McMullen loves this guy. We're getting a steal
and by
here
the way,
when we get him in the draft.
I think they got a steal, and I think he's going to be a very good player. And I think, me and the offensive line, I think that's a big building block for the Jets. But I do look at Williams, and I look at John Franklin Myers. I mentioned, I think, before the game, he's been one of the more underrated defensive linemen in this league.
What did he do last
week
against
much.
Eagles?
But,
what did he play? Are we sure he played? Because I don't remember his name being called very often.
C.J. Mosley, the frustration after the game. He's a good player, though. Look, that Eagles offensive line is really good. And I asked Nick Sirianni after the game specifically, what made this passing offense better with Gardner Minshew? And the first thing he said was the offensive line. It starts with the offensive line. He was clean the whole game. He was very comfortable the whole game. And that's where I always start with the Eagles. And that's where we started when we started Birds 365. That's where we started. And you and I both were more optimistic than most people with this team. From my perspective, it was because of the offensive line and the defensive line. Defensive line hasn't played up as well as I thought they were going to play as a whole. I think they played better lately. The offensive line has played better. And that's with all the injuries on top of it.
Missing both guards for basically the entire season.
Which is pretty amazing.
For them to be one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and that's how I would grade them through the first 13 games of the season. That's pretty damn impressive. I ran this by you on Monday, and our guests ever since. You know me, Mr. Hypothetical. I like to ask hypothetical questions.
I like the one this week. I stole it. I stole it to a number of guests.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. We're
the quarterback controversy.
365.
The quarterback controversy is not over. The potential is not over till halftime against the Washington football.
That's why I asked the question the way I asked it, because this was unknown at the time. This was before we knew it was a high ankle sprain, and you just said you're pretty sure the Jalen Hurts is not going to be 100% if he starts. We still don't know if he's even going to be able to start, which throws the hypothetical question completely out the window. But if he starts and he's not 100% and he's not playing well, it gives Nick Sirianni even more leverage to say, well, I had to put Gardner in. Well, I'm not benching Jalen. It's just that Jalen wasn't up to snuff with physicality, couldn't run. Yeah. So we decided in the midst of the game we had a better chance to win with Gardner. We gave Jalen a shot, and he just isn't physically ready to be Jalen Hurts again yet. So that's why we made the change. If they change in game, I guarantee, and Gardner Minshew does what he did last week against the Jets in the second half of this upcoming week, hold that percentage of 2/3, 1/3 Hurts over Gardner Minshew. We'll start this way. It'll get closer to 50-50. Yeah. It might even be on the 50% side of Gardner Minshew should be the guy going forward.
Yeah, and look, we've talked about this a lot, and I think, we've had some guests on during the week on Birds 365. We had Rob Monty from the Associated Press, and I think Rob said, if you think about Jalen Hurts and he deserves to be the starter, I don't necessarily like that term, deserves. It's the NFL. Everybody, you deserve, you earn a starting job. I think I like the word earned better than deserve.
Sure.
When you get to this point of the season and you're sitting there at 4 games with 2 against Washington, and you say, hey, it's all right there. A lot of teams can talk about it. We're taping this on Thursday, and there's a Thursday night football game. We're not going to talk a lot about because we're talking about the Eagles in the playoffs. But you have Minnesota, which technically is in the playoff hunt, but they're really not. The Eagles are legitimately in the playoff hunt.
Oh, sure.
And they have an opportunity to finish this off. And if that means Gardner Minshew, that means Gardner Minshew. I think you have to go that direction to try to get this playoff spot now. Other people say, no, the evaluation is more important. And to see Jalen Hurts under the pressure of a playoff push late in the season is more important than even getting into the first round of play. I don't agree with that.
I don't either.
I don't agree with it. So, there's 2 parts to this, and you and I have talked about this a lot. There's the evaluation part, and there's trying to win a football game each and every week. I think we're at the portion of the schedule, and I know Nick Sirianni thinks, I want to win this football game. And he's going to do what it takes to win a football game. And if that means going to a different quarterback at halftime, he'll go to a different quarterback at halftime.
And the Washington football team, who will be their next opponent next weekend after the bye is over and done with, all of a sudden started playing better defense again. They came into the year,
which is kind of weird, by the way.
It really is. Yeah. They were projected to be certainly a top half defense, probably a top 10 defense, and some people had them in the top 5 defense in the NFL.
I did. I thought they would be.
I was ready to go 10, but I don't know if I was ready to go 5. But I thought they were going to be a damn good defense. Well, sure enough, the season starts. They're giving up 30 points basically every single week. Yeah. They weren't getting to the quarterback with their highly touted 2 defensive bookends. They just weren't playing good defensive football. The injuries start to set in on the defense. They start to lose their supposed best players. All of a sudden, their defense kicks in.
Yeah.
And they played 4 good defensive weeks in a row in their 4 straight wins. I didn't see that coming. I didn't know they would start to lose players and get better defensively. That just doesn't add up, J-Mac.
Yeah, it doesn't, especially when one of the players is Chase Young. And, that kid is really, really talented. And then you look at Montez Sweat as well, who is not to the level of a Chase Young, but he really had a good season last year. And I think if you think about that defensive front and what it was supposed to be, it was first round pick, and that's why everyone looked at the Washington football team and said, "Wow, they got something going here," and they're all good. It wasn't like we were projecting, okay, Jonathan Allen's going to turn into this. No, Jonathan Allen is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Yeah. He is dominating people. Daron Payne is dominating people. Chase Young was Chase Young, and Montez Sweat was sort of that, that long, lengthy defensive end that bats footballs down, makes life crazy for the opposing quarterback. So when you lose those two guys, you naturally assume there's going to be a downtick. And it's been the exact opposite. And I think a lot of it has to do with Jonathan Allen turning it up another notch to the point where he has become one of those players opposing offensive coaches will call a game wrecker. And that's, the Aaron Donalds of the world, the Myles Garretts of the world, those TJ Watt, those types of players, the Bosa's. He's in that category for this year. That's how well he's playing.
And he does it without his two bookend defense. Yeah. Usually, if you have a defensive tackle that is going to be a game wrecker, as you described him, he needs a little help on the outside to keep the offensive line honest from not double-teaming him every single play. We talk about it all the time with the Eagles, with Fletcher Cox, that Fletcher's numbers aren't what they used to be. He's not getting the tackle. He's not getting the sack. Well, it's because he's doubled on every single play. Well, if you're doubling one of your tackles every play, that should open things up for the guys on the outside. Well, nobody's doubling the defensive ends who are filling in now for the Washington football team. And Allen's still making plays through those double teams. I wish we got a little bit more out of our highly paid defensive tackle.
I mean, you know me, the defensive, I think Fletcher's played a lot better over the last month. I think he started to play like Fletcher Cox. I think you're right. Early in the season, I don't think he was happy coming up. Jim Schwartz's scheme, he had so much success in it. He had so much freedom. He's a veteran player. He's like, come on, let me do what I did that turned me into this all-pro level player. And Jonathan Gannon came in with a different scheme, and he preached a more disciplined pass rush. It doesn't give you as many opportunities to freelance, and if you don't get sacks as a defensive lineman, you don't get paid. That's the mentality. But Fletcher's already been paid.
That's not part of the equation.
Well,
here.
I think it's settled into him. He's like, you know what? I already got I'm just going to play, and he's playing well. And all of a sudden, that defensive line, and you and I have had this discussion, the sacks aren't there, but the pressures are there. Overall, it's the 11th ranked defense in the NFL. If you would have told me before the season, there's been some ugly moments getting there, but if you would have told me, okay, 3 quarters through the season, essentially, we know it's 17 games, but number 11 in the NFL, I would have taken that.
Right, especially when you look at the only free agent acquisitions they made this offseason. They went shopping in Minnesota.
Yeah. Anthony Harris and Eric Wilson.
And how did Eric Wilson work out? Hope he's still cashing a check somewhere.
Texans.
But if he is, he's probably doing it at a check-cashing place.
Now he's on the Texans.
Oh, that's right, he is on it. Does he ever get on the field for them?
I don't know. I'll have to check. He shouldn't, I'll tell you that.
It wasn't a great signing. And you had him well pegged. You said, Jody, he can cover. He's a good coverage linebacker. Tackling, not really his strong suit. And, oh, man, did we learn that when he got here to Philadelphia. He was bad. That's why he was replaced. So kudos to Gannon and or anyone else who was in on the decision to have him replaced.
Under-heralded. Man, he's playing well. And there's an example of you can get players all over the place. You can, we always bring up Jordan Mailata as a 7th-round pick, and not only a 7th-round pick, but a 7th-round developmental pick who had never played college football, never played the game at all. And people say, well, you missed on Andre Dillard. Okay, you missed on Andre Dillard. He didn't turn out to be a star, but you found a star in the 7th round. But people don't think of it that way. You can't find a line, and I'm not going to say T.J. Edwards is a star, but he's playing like a very good linebacker.
Above average starter in the league.
And you haven't been able to do that in the draft. You haven't been able to do it in free agency with Eric Wilson, but you got one in T.J. Edwards. So what does it really matter? It only matters when you're nitpicking at the general manager, and people can do that, obviously. But, there's a lot of different ways to find players, and sometimes it works in the first and second round, like it has this year with Devontae Smith and Landon Dickerson. Sometimes it doesn't work, like Jalen Reagor, Andre Dillard. Although Andre played pretty well when he got in there. And I do think they'll be able to trade him in the offseason, get something for him. But, it makes it easier when you get players in other ways. The Eagles have been able to do that.
One linebacker question before we take our first break. Last year, Singleton was the guy who grabbed everybody's attention. Yeah. Playing like a guy with his hair on fire, unexpected, got in, making plays, big numbers and tackles every single week. This year it's T.J. Edwards. Who is better? It's last year's Singleton or this year's Edwards?
This year's Edwards.
You think he's that good, huh?
Yeah. One thing about Alex, and I thought Alex played well at the end of last season.
He did.
But he's undersized, and at times he can be bullied. At times he can be pushed back in the running game. He has trouble getting off blocks. And, a lot of his tackles, let's be honest, are 7-8 yards down the field. And all of a sudden you look at the box score and say, well, 15 tackles, that's pretty good. Well, maybe not. TJ's 240 pounds, and he can take on blocks. And, the knock against him was can't cover. And I always bring up Jack Del Rio, current defensive coordinator of the Washington football team, former head coach, obviously, in Jacksonville and Oakland. He's one of the best nickel linebackers I ever covered. I probably told you that. Couldn't run a lick, but he's just so instinctive. And, I say that for an NFL player. He can run compared to me, compared to you. Yeah. But he was so instinctive. So I always said, well, if you can run 4-4 at linebacker, and you're taking a false step, what does it matter if you got the instinctive guy who knows where to go immediately? He's beating you to the spot. And that's sort of how I compare T.J. Edwards.
Edwards having a damn good year at linebacker for the Eagles. All right, you're part of a special Birds 365 edition, the bye week edition. We're taping it live tonight at Screwballs, right here in King of Prussia. Great place. Come on out. You want to stop by anytime. Eagles viewing on Sundays. This is as good a place as any to watch it. Screwballs here in King of Prussia. You'll come back with the Mac and Mac guys next here on Birds 365. Thanks for hopping in on this special edition of Birds 365. Holy mackerel, we got people here. We are live at Screwballs in King of Prussia. And we got Eagle fans in the house. In case you couldn't verbally figure that out, we've got Eagle fans in the house, which we love to hear. You got McMullen and McDonald here, and we've got one of our stalwarts on the JAKIB YouTube channel. We like to call him the king of the coaching world. Self-proclaimed. See, I wasn't going to do that to you. That's what everybody else does. I'm your guy.
That disclaimer, and it just stuck. I didn't actually come up with it. Bruno came up with that.
Okay. Our buddy Henry Racich.
Shout out to Tony Bruno, by the way.
Yeah, I feel like Minshew coming in behind the back. I mean, the starters here. This is usually my backyard.
There you go. But backups become starters, as we've seen here in Philadelphia before. All right, Coach, what did you see out of Gardner Minshew on Sunday?
I saw a guy do his job. I saw a guy come in and fill in, respectfully. He put the ball where it needed to go. I didn't see as many runs as we would see with Hurts, obviously. He's not the athlete, fleet of foot like him. But, he managed the game. I mean, isn't that what your backup is supposed to do? Come in and manage the game when the starter goes down. And I just found it interesting how many people just jumped on that wagon. Like, he's the guy.
See, I think the opposite, Coach. I think typically the history of the Eagles is backup quarterbacks do very well.
They do. And the city falls in love with them.
Yes. I thought there was less of that this time than typically.
You expected more?
I expected way more.
Well,
way more.
Well, I mean, maybe it was the opponent. Maybe it was. I mean, if he jumps in and does that against the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, there is a true controversy if he comes in and does that against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
But it's the Jets, and it
is the Jets.
That's what I said. I've been trying to tell you that all week. You were at the game. I was at the game. The Jets defense couldn't cover anybody.
I give the Jets more credit than anybody else. I it.
I'm
Even
like,
the Jets
settle
fan.
down. It's the Jets, for God's sakes. But listen, I mean, the guy came out with energy, came out with passion. You know, he won the city over. You know, I mean, that's
Well,
his
that's
first
part
time.
of it, too, the personality of Gardner Minshew.
Oh, I love it.
You know, he's like the Big Lebowski come to life. He's do this, do that.
Yeah.
And
Him and his dad are real tight.
His dad, and everybody saw that video of him hugging his dad. He's got the Eagles bomber jacket on. He's talking about his short shorts and his powerful legs. He's just got this giant personality, whereas Jalen Hurts is this quiet kid, just really humble. Everything's low-key.
Hurts is kind of constantly under a microscope. It's kind of like if he had a flamboyant personality, I don't know if he'd bring it out here in Philly. I think the city's feeling him out, and he's feeling out the city as well. But when people are talking about these two athletes and trying to compare them, I have a hard time taking that really serious just because of the stage that Hurts came from. And I really like this kid. I mean, I think he's a proven winner. I think he just needs to refine his game. You know, he's not been a pro all that long. Is his arm strength an issue? Yeah, it is. But Minshew's not throwing bazookas around there.
Jalen's got better arm strength than Minshew.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So what I really noticed about the offense is I don't know how many times Minshew ran the ball, but this Eagles offense, after I watched the Belichick game of him just dominating a team on the ground, how demoralizing is that? And the Eagles have the number one rush offense. Why can't they do that?
But Coach, you got to have 50-mile-an-hour winds
to do that.
Yeah, because if Josh Allen can throw the ball at will,
that's another game. That's a whole other game if Josh Allen can throw the ball. But you got to be impressed with the fact that 46 times, and he threw the ball 3 times, and the amount of yardage. They made a big deal out of the Pats putting up 200 yards. The Eagles have done that 3 games in a row, right?
4 out of 6.
Yeah, I mean, when have you heard those stats in recent years? I kind of like the way the Eagles are going old school smash mouth when the rest of the league is tiny linebackers cover the pass.
Yeah,
they may be onto something.
I was waiting for somebody, and it's Belichick usually, but I give Nick Sirianni a ton of credit, both of you guys, for seeing that. And you're right. You have 220-pound linebackers, glorified safeties, essentially.
Playing linebacker.
Trying to get up blocks from Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson.
They're mashing people.
Jordan, it's like offensive line porn every week.
Right.
If those guys are just pancaking people, it's been pretty amazing to watch, and that's the strength of the Philadelphia Eagles. But is that sustainable as a coach? Is that sustainable in the modern NFL when you go up against, when you get to the Aaron Rodgers of the world, the Tom Brady's of the world, the Patrick Mahomes of the world that can throw it all over the lot?
Here's the reason why I say the answer to your question is no. If Nick Sirianni tried to do that, run the ball down the other team's throat, trailing 14-0,
can't do it.
Would he get roasted? He'd get crushed.
Right.
So there are going to be games where you're going to fall behind. So you have to have plan B. If plan A is run, okay, but there better be a plan B. Your plan B is more of plan A? No, that doesn't work. You actually have to have the plan B. That's why you have to have a passing game in the NFL. What Belichick did on Monday night was weather-related and weather-related only. You're not going to see that anytime, anywhere else in the NFL this year.
You can't pack hurricane force winds.
No.
Well, John, you're an insider, so I have a sense that Nick Sirianni is still discovering what this team can do. At the beginning of the season, did he think he was going to have 4 200-yard rushing games? Because all you heard at the beginning of the year was the Lions beat up, it's hodgepodge. But I think he's discovering where his strength is with this team in that run game. And, I just think Hurts with some more development and more cohesion with receivers. I do think they need another big-name receiver.
Yes.
In the house to give another weapon to go to.
I mean, Nick is very honest. He wants to play 11 personnel. He wants to play, and that, by the way, he's right. But where I think has been really, really positive about Nick Sirianni is he learned he doesn't have the personnel to play that right now.
Right.
So he's trying to take advantage of the personnel he has right now, and I think that's the definition of a good coach. I mean, you have to have, and you know this, you have to have your DNA as a coach.
Right.
You want to get there, but nothing's ever going to be perfect, and you have to take advantage of what you have while you're trying to get there.
Has this Eagles team won over the city, in your guys' estimation? For where you thought the season was going to go, a rookie head coach, a very young quarterback, a pretty young team. I feel like Sirianni owns it when he messes up. What I like about that guy, it's hard to not like him. And I didn't really know much about him, but he owns anything. He'll own it. If he made a mistake, he'll own it. And I think he's winning over the city. I think Hurts won over the team.
Definitely won over the locker room.
So I just think like this team to me has so much promise with just a few more solid pieces. You're talking about a contender in the East.
But to answer your question, no. This team has not, the fan base has not been won over by this team yet for one reason only, 2017. To actually win the town over with a below 500 record,
right, maybe it wasn't
not happening.
How about expectation levels? Do you think that this team has
I
met
think they're
or
on
exceeded
pace to
expectation
do what better than what most people thought. John and I, at the beginning of the season, before it ever started, we made our predictions, and we both came back at 8-9. And everybody was making predictions that week leading into the year. There were more below 8-9 than there were above 8-9.
Right.
So there were some people who were predicting 10, 11, 12 wins. God bless them. They're very optimistic. But we were on the higher side of the Eagle prediction. So right now they're on pace to do that. 8 or 9 wins, which means they're a little more optimistic, a little bit more accomplished than maybe most people thought.
I mean,
so if that's the question, I would say yes.
Hunt. I mean, did you think they were going to be in a playoff hunt? You know, beginning of the season.
Yes, because we both had them at 8-9. I knew.
And
remember,
the division's weak. Yeah, weaker division.
Remember that 7th playoff seed. You knew it would be around 500. So you'd probably be in this position where the Eagles are. They have a chance. If they beat Washington twice, they're probably going to make the playoffs. So if they lose to them, they're not going to make the playoffs. So they're on that even keel where you're going to be around 500. So that part doesn't surprise me. It probably surprised me after the Las Vegas game when I said, you know what, maybe this is a bad football team. And to Nick Sirianni's credit, that's where he sort of morphed this team from being, the RPO heavy, we're going to throw the football, we're going to put everything in the hands of Jalen Hurts to we're going to run for 200 yards. And I give Nick Sirianni a ton of credit for that. In-season adjustments, you don't see that. And I've called him the best rookie head coach in this league. Now, low bar. Brandon Staley's probably his only real competition. A lot of the other rookie head coaches are not doing well. Robert Saleh, Arthur Smith, some of the other ones not doing well. So, but still, when you look at when the Eagles and Jeffrey Lurie hired Nick Sirianni, everybody was like, who's this guy? What's this? Yeah. That's pretty good. Jeffrey Lurie tends to get it right. Ray Rhodes, very good his first year. Chip Kelly, very good. Obviously, Andy Reid was very good. And nobody knew Andy Reid. Doug Peterson is Doug Peterson. He generally gets coaching hires right.
And it sometimes take time. The question is, are you going to have the staying power? You and I discussed it on the show today about how long does it take? Can you turn the team over and continue with the same coach? That's when you've got a really successful coach that they'll acknowledge something needs to change, but we're not going to change the coach. So we're going to try and change all the players, which is much more difficult to do. Coach is just one move. You hire him, you fire him, you hire a new guy. To turn over a roster takes money, takes calculations, takes time. It's not easy to significantly turn over a roster.
And by the way, I like Nick Sirianni, but Doug Peterson deserved that. He deserved the opportunity to turn the roster over because he got this organization what they never had before. And I can't believe, I joked, when I was in Minneapolis for the Super Bowl, I said, okay, Doug's got a lifetime dispensation card in Philadelphia. Turned out to be 2 years.
He went so fast after winning a Super Bowl.
It's unbelievable to me.
Is it because he wanted too much control, or what was the fact? What was the
no. The thing about Doug is he didn't have much control to start.
Right. He was just trying to claw his little piece, and they weren't having it.
Yeah. Doug wanted to elevate Press Taylor to be his offensive coordinator. He wanted to elevate Matt Burke to be his defensive coordinator. Jeffrey Lurie said no, and basically Doug put his foot in the ground and said, all right, well.
He drew a line, and
he should have. He should have gotten the opportunity to do what he wanted to do, but, you are where you are.
Let me get both of you guys on record here. And, John, I don't think you and I have talked about this on Birds 365 for months. about every 6 or 8 weeks, Doug appears somewhere.
John Clark usually.
In Philadelphia, mostly on the John Clark podcast. Come in, play a charity golf tournament.
Yeah.
We're done with the year for that because it's December now. I think Doug Peterson should get another shot. You said he should have gotten a chance to rebuild the Eagles. Well, he should surely get another chance with another organization.
No question.
Is he a top candidate this offseason? Will Doug Peterson be a head coach?
Because you don't hear his name out there. You don't hear his name.
Yeah, but nobody's talking about it yet. It hasn't started yet. The cycle hasn't started yet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, people, Lombardi trophies hold a lot of weight in this league, a lot of cachet. So he'll get another coaching job. I don't know where it's going to be. I think Seattle would be a great fit because Doug's from Bellingham, Washington, loves it up there. Still lives in South Florida now, but everybody lives in South Florida just for the weather. He would take that job in a second. A lot of people are saying this might be it for Pete Carroll. He might retire. I think that would be a perfect situation for him. But he'll get another head coach.
You buy that? I talked about that on my national radio show on Sunday. No one of consequence had said this could be the last year for Coach Carroll up there in Seattle. I surely haven't heard it from him. I haven't heard it from any of his confidants. Are you suggesting that Seattle would fire him, or that he walk away under pressure?
I think it would more be a walk away. I don't think they'd fire him, but they might have that conversation like, look, Pete, we want to go in a different direction. Allow him to retire.
I have not seen that. As a matter of fact, if anything, I've always thought that Pete Carroll was a little too cocky. And, hey, he pulled it off. He won a Super Bowl. He shut me up because I remember when he was the coach of my JETS, Jets, and he did nothing. But he was as cocky as he was today. Right. He hadn't accomplished anything yet, but he was as cocky as he was. Then he got to be cocky because he won a national championship in college. He won one in the NFL. You be as cocky as you want. He is cocky. I don't think you can talk him out of the job. I think you'd have to fire his rear end if you wanted to move on from him.
I don't think he would just walk away.
I don't think he's a walk-away kind of guy.
If he loses Wilson, would that?
Well, that might be part of it. You know, Pete's over 70 years old. He doesn't look like it.
Right.
But, I mean, he looks phenomenal.
And more importantly, he doesn't act like it.
Yeah. He's got tremendous energy. So, I've heard a couple people speculate about it, but it's because Seattle's having a bad season.
Right.
And if Russell Wilson does try to force his way out, do you want to start over with another quarterback at 71 years old? You start to enter that question. And you can walk away from one job and say, I'm going to retire, like Jim Schwartz retired for 3 weeks, and then he's back. You can retire for 3 weeks, and then if something else opens, you can go in that direction.
If you guys, I don't mean to blindside you with this question, but if you're GM for a day, what are 3 moves you're making with this Eagles team?
Jody?
Pass rusher, number 1. Maybe pass rusher, number 2. People are suggesting that the Eagles... Well, no, I'll ask John, because his answer will help with my answer. The Eagles going to need 1 new safety this offseason or 2?
Well, if I can get Kyle Hamilton, I'm getting Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame. I don't know if they can get him where they are right now, but they can trade up. They can package. Where are they, like 12, 13, 17, I think. Because Miami keeps winning, they keep winning, Indy keeps winning, so those draft picks keep going down. I try to get Kyle Hamilton, number 1. I try to trade for Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, which would really be number 1. And then I draft Kyle Hamilton. Then I draft the best available pass rusher with that other pick.
Yeah, priority for me right now is pass rusher.
Oh, and I'm going to add a 4th. Sign a veteran receiver. Not a draft receiver, a veteran, proven receiver.
So how come the Eagles don't value the linebacker position like a lot of other teams? Is there a history or a philosophy behind this?
Goes back to 1979. No, but that's the last time they drafted an all-ball linebacker in the 1st round, Jerry Robinson. And there's been a lot, obviously, that predates Shepard Lurie, that predates Howard Roseman, that predates Joe Banner, that predates everybody. But there is something to the modern NFL. The position has been devalued. Now, you see guys in last year's Super Bowl, the Bucs had 2 pretty good linebackers.
Oh, God, yeah.
You see some of these linebackers, and they can make a big difference. But the Eagles, they don't value that position. like they value edge rusher, cornerback, obviously quarterback. Those are the positions they value most. Defensive tackle as well. They don't value the position as much. So when they're in the top 10, top 15 of the draft, they're not looking at linebackers generally.
And with this, do you think more of the league's going to go to this smash mouth football? Because it seems like defenses are built to stop the pass more than the run these days. So did the Eagles stumble upon something brilliant? Or, I mean, is this accidental brilliance that they're able to mash so many defenses and grind them down?
I think it's part of, other people have done it. It tends to show up in December every year. People don't care about running backs or the running game until December, especially on the East Coast, when the weather gets bad.
Right.
Then I say, oh, it'd be nice if we can run the football.
Right.
And Belichick has done it in the past, and he did it again against Buffalo when he had to. So I don't know if it's stumbling on as much as they have a really good offensive line, and they figured out this is our best way to win. But guess what? If they had Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, I don't think they'd be playing that way.
John just gave you the example of last year's champion, and don't kid yourself. The NFL has been, will continue to be a copycat league. Right. Everyone looks up at the top and says, how do we do that? Right. So he's right. Linebackers were a big part of the championship team last year. Leonard Fournette stepped in, did a nice job. You wouldn't call the Bucs a running team.
Right.
The team they played, Clyde Edwards-Helaire changed it a little bit in Kansas City. The Chiefs are going to live and die on Patrick Mahomes' right arm. So the trend in the National Football League is not going to go back. Because the Eagles are doing it to get to 500. It's not going to make everybody in the NFL go next year. Smash mouth football. That's what we need. More. No, it's a passing league. It has been a passing league. It will continue to be a passing league. But I've said this on Birds 365, every show I've ever done anywhere. In all sports, I hate when people say the only way to win is this. And they pick out one narrow lane to get in and say, no. You need to be able to do a bunch of different things. It's the teams that end up winning championships, like we just talked about. The Bucs winning championship last year.
Very balanced.
With defense, with offense. They're a balanced team. Right. Balance brings trophies. Right. Not the best offensive, not the best defensive team. If you stink on the other side, guess what? You're not going to win a championship. Right. So balance is the key, and that is one thing. I know the Eagles still a game below 500, but they have been a more balanced team this year. The offense has won games for them. The defense has won games for them.
Special teams.
Decided Jalen Reagor, special teams, has won games for them this year. They started to build it in the right direction, that they haven't gone overboard in any one direction, any one position, any one side of the football. They had a nice balanced off season with the results that they're getting this year. All right, we got to take a quickie timeout. We'll come back here. Coach, is Coach going to hang with us for another segment? Can we keep Coach for another segment?
If the bar's open, I'm hanging.
The bar's open, the coach is going to hang. We got Coach with Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. Back here on a special edition of Birds 365, a bye-week edition. We're taping live at Screwball's in King of Prussia, home of the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. We appreciate it whenever they invite us out here. Glad to be with you tonight. Jody McDonald, John McMullen, our bud, the self-professed king of the coaching world.
King of the coaching world.
Pop Warner.
Does that go over Bill Belichick? King of the coaching world?
The Prince, then. Let's call him Prince.
Henry Racich with us. All right, this goes to both Coach and my partner. Coaching matchup. Next game, Philadelphia Eagles. We've sat here and said some really nice things about the job that Nick Sirianni has done. He's outcoached a couple guys this year, but usually other first-year coaches. Yeah. Now he's going up against
king of the first-year coaches.
He is, but that's not a first-year coach on the other sideline. It's Ron Rivera, who's done a really good job. You and I talked about it earlier here on the show, John, about how is this team one of the best defenses in the NFL over the last month, as they're dropping like flies with their key players. And I think the coach has got to get some credit for that. I've always been a Rivera fan. Riverboat Ron, go back to him when he's days here as an assistant under Andy Reid here in Philadelphia. Damn good coach, nervy coach. Team plays very hard for them. Do we have a chance to be badly outcoached the 2 times that the Washington football team and Eagles are going to play?
Well, there's a lot of experience. I mentioned Jack Del Rio before. He's the defensive coordinator, so, I mean, he's got a lot of experience. And what we talked about the Eagles coaching staff all year, it's not just Nick Sirianni. There's not a ton of experience as a whole outside Jeff Stoutland. Jamal Singleton's been a position coach for a while, but Jonathan Gannon's very young. He was an assistant position coach less than 5 years ago, and he's already defensive coordinator at 37. I think experience matters in the coaching world. We saw it with Bill Belichick. We've been talking about it, morphing from week to week. You talked about balance. To me, the best thing about Bill Belichick is he trusts in his own ability to teach people. So, roundabout way of saying it, but we talked about the Eagles' struggles at the wide receiver position, and they need another wide. Why not try Kenny Gainwell? You're making him inactive. He's a great pass catcher. And I told you, Jody, and I believe this still, they're not going to do that because they don't have time to do it. That's an off-season type thing. That's something Bill Belichick would do because he has confidence in himself to teach the player to do it. I don't think the Eagles coaching staff is at that point, but I don't think there's many coaches staffs at that point. But they clearly will have an experience issue against Ron Rivera in that staff, I think.
Rivera's a damn good coach. I think he's a top 10 coach in this league. They made the playoffs last year, but they weren't really a playoff team. We all know somebody had to make it out of the NFC least.
And by the way, they played pretty well
They
against
played
the
Tampa as well as anybody in the playoffs, and that was a Ron Rivera coach team that was out there.
With a young quarterback.
Yeah.
Correct. Right? Let me get your thought on that, Coach, because Shirley, John, and I talked about it this week. Taylor Heineke, kind of a lot like Gardner Minshew of the Eagles.
Yeah.
Knows his job, knows what he has to do, goes in, doesn't make mistakes, not going to force feed things. He's not going to throw a 60-yard bomb over the top and hit the receiver dead in stride, but is a good quote-unquote game manager. Will having a guy like Minshew help them prepare for a guy like Heineke because they have similar games?
Heineke's a lot more mobile, I feel like, more athletic than Minshew is. But I just the jury's still out for me on the entire Eagles coaching staff as far as a grade. I don't know how you guys would grade the defensive coordinator, the Sirianni and the play calling compared to any team or just across the league. Do you think that they're doing an above-average job as a young coaching staff or average?
Me, I think they're above average. As I said, I think they're the best of the rookie coaches. I think Nick has been the best of the rookie coach. You could argue Brandon Staley. I mean, they beat the Eagles. They're in that same realm, but I think he's got a much. I think Justin Herbert's a superstar in this league. So they're starting from a higher floor than the Eagles are, and that's why I give Nick Sirianni a little bit more credit than Brandon Staley. He's also got a guy on defense in Joey Bosa, who's the Eagles don't have that player. That's a game-wrecking type player. Fletcher Cox maybe was that at one time, but he's not that right now. So I think he had the advantage of better personnel, and I think Nick has done a better job. Jonathan's the one who's taken most of the hits. And, it's funny because in this last 4 or 5 weeks until the beginning of the Jets game, people had kind of forgotten about him because the defense started to play well. They're 11th in the NFL. I was telling Jody earlier in the show. If I told you the Eagles
quietly the 11th, right?
If I told you the Eagles had the 11th best defense in the NFL back in August, 3 quarters through the season, would you take that?
Absolutely would not believe that. Giving up 40 points a couple games in a row. He's gotten more aggressive, I feel, than he was at the beginning of the season. He's playing more like arena zone defenses than bringing some heat.
Yeah, I mean, he plays too much zone even for my liking. Jody will chide me because I get along really well with Jonathan. But, I'm the first one who I think he plays too much zone. But, I mean, that has to do with first and second downs. They were really unsuccessful. So when it's 3rd and 2, he's not going to blitz. If it's 3rd and 12, he's probably going to bring some extra pressure.
The reason why I would agree with John that I would say the Eagles coaching staff to this point is above average, it's because I grade on a curve. They are a brand new staff. They are as young as John just laid out. So did I expect them to come in here and have a Belichicking-like coaching staff? No, of course not. Right. You were building something. When Jeff Lurie made the hire, it was building a coaching staff. They gave Nick Sirianni more say in it than they ever gave Doug Peterson, even after Doug won a Super Bowl. Yeah. But it was a building process.
It's amazing,
when you start from the bottom up, you have to give them a little slack for growing pains. And I think this coaching staff has gone through growing pains even in this season. I would say growing pains over a couple of years. They've already gotten better and shown growth in season 1, which is a real good sign, which is the reason I would say I would rate them as above average. Now, it's a matchup every single week. We are asking both of us about to this point this season. So it's all 13 games Eagles have played. The only thing that matters, as Nick Sirianni likes to say, is this week going 1-0.
Yeah.
Right.
So what they've done the last 13 weeks is kind of got to go out the window if I think Ron Rivera blatantly outcoaches Nick Sirianni this week.
But if you look forward, it's going to be Ron Rivera, which I think you have some rightfully concerned about. I think he's a really good coach. I'm with you. Joe Judge, I'm not concerned about. Ron Rivera, I am concerned about again. And then Mike McCarthy may or may not. And more, the Dallas Cowboys, I give Dan Quinn more credit than Mike McCarthy for what he's done with that defense and at least gotten them to, I talk about that with Kansas City. With that Dallas offense, if those receivers are healthy, if Dak Prescott is healthy, if that offensive line is healthy, they're going to be tough to deal with offensively. You know that. But that defense was really, really bad. And Dan Quinn's got them up to where, they're competent. And they make plays. Trevon Diggs makes plays. And all of a sudden, they look like a really good football team. So I think it's more Dan Quinn than anything. But overall, I think Nick Sirianni has been, and that's where I grade coaches. Jody said curve, I grade on adjustments. If you do something bad, adjust. If you keep going to the same thing, you're a bad coach, I think. You as a coach, if you don't adjust, that's a bad sign. He's adjusted his rookie season a lot. I think that's a positive sign.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, as I said earlier, that he owns his mistakes. He doesn't keep repeating them. I feel like he's learning on the job just as much as his quarterback's learning on the job, and some other rookie, coaches on this staff. But if we go back to 2017, after that year, the impact of a coach, how much did Frank Wright leaving the building affect the Philadelphia Eagles? Because some people say he's kind of the mastermind behind the play of Wentz and Foles and all that stuff. Is that a thing?
It's tough for me to say because I like Frank a lot as a person. I think a lot of people don't know, and I've told this story on the show, Jody. The Eagles wanted to fire Frank Reich after the 2016 season. Doug Peterson stepped in and essentially saved his job. And I know that's a lot of disconnect. And when I say saved his job, it's like, look, this guy's doing a really good job. And Jeffrey and Howie acquiesced and said, okay, we'll try it again. The rest is history. They won the Super Bowl. And then Frank obviously left of his own accord because he got the Indianapolis job. It was Doug Peterson's offense. It was always Doug Peterson's offense. And I don't think Doug Peterson gets the credit he deserves. It's astonishing to me.
Same here. If Frank Reich had gone to Indianapolis and immediately taken the Colts to an AFC championship game, I'm not even talking about winning a Super Bowl, which Doug Peterson did. I'm not even talking about getting to a Super Bowl, which Doug Peterson did. If Frank Reich had stepped in there and elevated the Colts in either his first or second year to an AFC championship game, maybe it was more Frank Reich than we have.
Right.
He's gone there, he improved them out of the gate, and now they're kind of flatlining. They're not getting worse, but they're flatlining. This year, supposedly, Carson Wentz was going to elevate them because you had an aging Phillip Rivers. They were above 500 last year. They're 500 right now. So I like Frank Reich. He liked Frank Reich. People like Frank Reich. They wanted some kind of an explanation why they didn't go immediately back to another Super Bowl and it's down.
Right.
That doesn't happen too often. So somebody had to get credit for it if those who were still here weren't reproducing it. And I think Frank Reich was just kind of an easy guy you could paint as
and
the
you know,
hero.
Frank is, as I said, he's such a nice guy. He gave me 10 minutes after the Super Bowl, so you can imagine, you know, how excited everyone was. And he took his time to just talk to me for 10 minutes. And what he said, he wasn't talking about himself. Well, he talked about the fourth down play, which he said was the biggest play of the football game. And I'll always remember, and I still never forget it, and I say it all the time. I asked him about Doug, and he said, Doug, Frank doesn't curse. He said, Doug is a flippin' star. That's how he talks.
Wow.
And that's what he said about Doug Peterson. And I will never get it as long as I'm in this city, why he's not the head coach of this football team.
So, I asked you earlier, and I'm hoping for Doug Peterson to get another job. And if he can, I'm not even talking about reproducing, but improve another franchise, it will go to make the argument that you're making. The Eagles were overreactive when they pulled the plug on it. All right, one more thing about the upcoming game against Washington while we still got you here, Coach. Eagles coming home with a 1-4 record. They did okay up the Turnpike, 1-1. They probably should have gone 2-0, but last thing is the thing
should have won 2-0.
you remember most, and they beat the snot out of the Jets. They're only a 1-4 home team. Now, they played some good teams at home that they lost to, but 1-4 is 1-4. Right. They're only going to play 8 home games, so the best they can be is 4-4 for the season, which that's not considered a home field advantage. Eagle fans are into this team now because they are in the playoff hunt. I think it's been loud down there at games. John, you've been there. I've been watching it on TV, so I can't judge as well as you can. Home field advantage, non-existent, overstated, doesn't matter. You correctly pointed out on the show, Doug Peterson made a big deal about when they won their first home game. Yeah. He wants it to be a home field advantage and knows what it can be. How big is the fact that this game is home this week? Got to play Washington twice, but get the home game first to get the W first to build up your confidence a little bit in the mano-a-mano matchup between the team you're going to play twice in 3 weeks.
Well, you know, I think coming off of a win against the Jets, getting a week rest, coming back home for a little bit of a homestand, you would think it would be a big home field advantage, but I just don't see it happening with this team for some reason. I don't know if there's an answer for this, but the fans will be raucous down there, as they always are, and I don't know. Is it the demeanor of Hurts is just so cerebral sometimes that he doesn't seem to get emotional either way, very high or very low? He seems like a pretty even keel guy. Oh, is the team taking that identity? I mean, you know, they love the guy. I know the team's behind them, but maybe that's the whole identity. Maybe it's just, you know, we're in our own foxhole, block it all out, whether you're on the road or at home. I can't put my finger on this team and how they play at home.
Yeah, well, the lack of success at home, I think, is mainly related to the schedule. I mean, they played a bunch of teams that were just better than them. In hindsight, maybe San Francisco wasn't as good as we thought they were going to be, but they're still a playoff-level team.
Yeah, they're 500.
Chargers, same thing, still a playoff-level team. They might get in, they might not. And obviously Kansas City and Tampa Bay, legitimate Super Bowl contenders. I thought they were going to lose those games, no question. All of them. Maybe they beat the Chargers. That's where I was coming into the season. So nothing's really changed, but I do think the home field advantage is not what it once was when they were having success, and I think that's just natural. I mean, look, when they're 6-7, so if they're 10-3, I think that place is going to be raucous. 6-7. If they play well, it's going to be raucous. If they play poorly, it's going to go the opposite way. It's going to go booze, booze, booze. And this is, we're in sports talk radio, Jody. Everybody says must win, must win. Obviously, literally, this is not a must-win game after the bye. Figuratively, it is. The home and home series, if you don't get your home win, you're in deep, deep trouble. And the Eagles get home field advantage first. They got to hold serve.
Actually, rather than a home field advantage, I would say it's a road team advantage for the Washington football team this week. if they lose. Then they can go, all right, yeah, but we're getting back in our house.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So from the Eagles' perspective, that's why I said not literal must win, but figurative. You got to get this one.
Birds 365 hanging out at Screwballs in King of Prussia. We'll come back. Final segment. Thank the coach for hopping hour with us tonight.
Guys.
Thank you very much. Mac and Mac guys coming back. Final segment of Birds 365 is next. All right, welcome back to Birds 365, a special bye-week edition.
Screwball!
This is going to be airing this weekend here on the JAKIB YouTube channel because we don't have the Eagles to talk about because they're not going to be playing a game this week. Yes, the bye week finally arrived, Johnny Mac. Eagles had to gut their way through the first 13 weeks of the season. It's almost like not having a bye for the entire year, but they knew what it was. They prepped for it was. Nick Sirianni cut back on Wednesday practices and went straight through the walkthroughs. And I keep an eye on this stuff for fantasy purposes. And, yeah, we make picks on games. We picked the Eagle game here on Birds 365, but I pick games elsewhere. So I stay on top of the injuries around the league pretty inclusively. I would say the Eagles are in the bottom third of the NFL as far as significant injuries go. They lost their two guards early.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of an injury, early in the year, know they're done, know they're gone, even though we continue to hear that Brooks may come back and play. It's been that way for about 6 weeks now and keeps getting put back.
We're going to have an update after the bye, supposedly.
Supposedly, we're going to have an update. When I hear it, I'll believe it. But until then, I'll shade a little doubt there. Compared to the other teams around the league, and a lot of this is luck. I'm not bending over backwards to give the Eagles credit because they managed this season better than anyone else in the league. But I think they did a pretty good job of managing if you do judge by how injured teams are.
Yeah, I agree. You know, a lot of that, there's all kinds of studies in sports science, and this has been a narrative in Philadelphia for a couple of years because this team went through a stretch in the Doug Peterson era where they had a lot of injuries, obviously, a lot of soft tissue injuries, and a lot of questionable ones. I go back to Darren Sproles, probably the most interesting. You talk about hurt his hamstring that 1 year, and all of a sudden a 2-week injury turned into a 4-week injury, turned into an 8-week injury, turned into a 10-week injury. And I thought the Eagles made the player look bad because people are saying, why is Darren Sproles out this long for a hamstring injury? And you start questioning the players. And it turned out it was much more serious. It was a torn hamstring, and it was, not being above board. And I don't think that helps the players. I think that's where the Eagles have gotten a little bit better. Nick Sirianni's been more upfront about injuries, with the exception of Brandon Brooks. And maybe because it's not about an injury, to be honest. It's about other things, contract, and what he's going to do next year and what the Eagles are going to do next year. I don't know that for a fact. That's just speculation. I want to put that out there. But he's been pretty much – we had the kick and claw to get injuries from Doug Peterson. Nick, we asked him and he tells us. So I give him a lot of credit for that as well. But as far as the number of injuries, the number of serious injuries, a lot of that is just luck. It really is. I mean, guys get injured and guys don't get it, and they've been relatively lucky, I would say, this year.
There is some luck involved, that's for darn sure. Do you give Nick Sirianni credit for gaining competitive advantage when he doesn't give out
silly.
Information?
That's silly. It's that part of it's silly.
Come on, he thinks that's how he's winning games because he keeps certain things under wraps.
It's not more about injuries as much as when somebody goes down, it's like who's going to play.
Right, who's subbing in.
And then he'll be like, well, I think that's it. And he's full of you-know-what, but hey, if he believes it, God bless him. Maybe it makes him sleep a little bit. I don't know.
Everybody's got their quirks, and Nick Sirianni's got his too. But, hey, the plant is growing. The fertilizer is working, unless, of course, they lose this week.
Nobody talks about the plant anymore. I love the plants. I loved it.
It was great until they got beat by the Giants, a team that most everybody thought they
didn't take that day.
Plant didn't take. But they replanted, and it took in the Meadowlands last week against the Jets. All right, looking ahead to the Washington football team a couple weeks ago. Was going to do this with you on our earlier show today on Thursday. We've got a battle of two Memphis running backs facing off against each other this week. Or maybe
the
not.
Storied history of Memphis. Running back University of Memphis.
Don't know if it's ever quite garnered that name, but both Kenny Gainwell and Antonio Gibson played together. They were on the same team at Memphis. Now, we should actually know Memphis because they play Temple every year. And I did watch that game. And I watched some of Memphis football. I didn't watch them week in and week out. But I had to look at the numbers when they were teammates in 2019 together. For Antonio Gibson to come into the league and have as good a start to his career as he had, pretty damn amazing. He was absolutely the backup. Gainwell was the damn close to bell cow back with Memphis when he was there. Here are their 2019 numbers. Kenneth Gainwell ran it 231 times. Now they're playing 12-game season. That's pretty good workload. That's a lot of carries, 231 carries. Gibson had 33 to 231. Yardage was 1459, which was good for Gainwell, 6.3 yards per carry. Antonio Gibson rushed for 369 yards on 33 carries. That's 11.2 yards per carry.
Well, Antonio was more the manufactured touchdown. He was the jet sweep guy, the orbit motion guy. So he was designed to be more of a surprise.
You mean like Jalen Reagor?
Yeah, like Jalen Reagor.
How's that working?
Well, it tends to
sure
work.
As hell isn't 11.2 yards per carry, McMullen.
It tends to work better at the college level, number one, than it does at the pro level. But, he was a different type of player, and Kenny was a running back. And even Kenny, they played a lot of five wides at Memphis. Kenny would line up at wide receiver. So he was the bell cow, and it was interesting because Kenny didn't play in 2020. So
Right, took the year off.
A lot of people thought he would be a second or third round pick, and not a first round pick because he's got some size issues, and it's tough for any running back to be a first round pick anyway. So that really helped the Eagles, if you think about it, because he opted out for COVID in 2020, and he took a hit in his draft stock, and they get him in the 5th round. He's a really good player, and he's going to be the third down back in Philadelphia, I think, for a long time. I think he's going to be Austin Eckler for this team, out of the backfield for a very long time. And who knows? Eckler started out as just the third down pass catching back, and now he's the main back. Maybe that happens for Kenny down the road. But he's a really good natural pass receiver, and they haven't had that in a while.
They haven't. And it will be really interesting to see what happens come next Sunday when they have taken the Wright. He might not even dress.
Yeah, he probably
They
won't.
did sit him 2 weeks ago when all three backs when they got Sanders back. Howard and Scott have been the workhorse backs. Somebody's got to go. I asked you, I remember leading into that. Would they dress all four backs? And you said no.
I said no, and they should. I would dress all four for the reason that Boston Scott can play special teams. So Boston can help you on special teams. So he's more than just a running back. And that gets you everybody dressed, and you have this ability, because I think Kenny Gainwell offers something to that offense that none of the other running backs do. But the other running backs were playing so well, specifically Howard and Boston Scott. When Miles Sanders got hurt, you couldn't bench them.
Right.
So I got that part of it from Nick's thought process. But now that it's sort of calmed down and Miles is back and Jordan got hurt and Boston was sick, now you could probably say, you know what? All right, I'm not going to dress Boston Scott. I'm going to dress Kenny Gainwell, or dress all four.
Here's where you make the argument for dressing all four. How'd Greg Ward do last week?
Didn't play.
Did not get a snap. Was active. Stood on these sidelines the entire game. Never actually crossed the white to get out to the green.
So why not?
Why wouldn't you activate a
and by the way,
if that's the case?
Boston Scott took over for Jalen Reagor on kickoff returns. So maybe make him the kickoff returner.
Not surprised, but I gave you the numbers. Gibson's numbers were off the charts, running 11.2 yards per carry. Receiving for those two guys, and you know that Gainwell was on the field that much more. Gainwell, 51 receptions for 610 yards, 3 touchdowns. For Antonio Gibson, 38 catches, 735 yards for 38. That's almost 20 yards a catch for a guy coming out of the backfield. backfield.
He's a good player.
And oh, by the way, he had 8 receptions, 8 receiving touchdowns.
He is a really, really good player. And I think I called him on the morning show, and I think he's one of the most underrated skill position players in this league. For whatever reason, people don't talk about him a lot. And I get it. Terry McLaurin is probably the best skill position player in Washington, but I think a lot of his success will be alleviated by the presence of Darius Slay. Taylor Heineke isn't a good deep ball thrower to begin with. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm game planning with Antonio Gibson. I say I have to stop Antonio Gibson first and foremost.
All right, something we never got to this morning. We got as busy as we did. It's not a big deal, but it's a decision the Eagles made. Because injury on the offensive line, they called up LaRaven Clark from the practice squad. Not only did they make him part of the roster, they give him a contract extension, too, for next year.
Yeah.
I know that the Eagles, hey, Jordan Mailata, he knew he wasn't going to step on the field for his entire rookie year. They carried him all year long. They didn't even want to expose him to the practice squad. So building a player up in the National Football League is something that more teams are doing now. COVID has kind of helped there with expanded practice squads and the like. They're showing their hand that they think LaRaven Clark is a player, a future player who could be a guy who contributes, not just an off-the-bench injury fill-in guy. Do you like LaRaven Clark enough to go extension on him at this stage of the year?
Well, my guess when that happened, my first guess, and I'll know probably for sure next week when the Eagles get back, but my first indication was somebody was trying to sign him off the practice squad. That's what happens. And then you can either go back and say, look, so-and-so wants to sign me. LaRaven's agent will say the Eagles will come out and, okay, we'll bring you. In this case, they not only gave him a 53-man roster spot, they gave him an extra year on his contract. He's not a young player. He's a veteran player. He was the 3rd-round pick by the Colts. He tore his Achilles, I think in 2016. He tore his Achilles last year. So he was one of those guys that was injured when
28?
2016.
No, I'm asking how old he is.
28. Yeah, he's 28. So he's been playing for a while. And he tore his Achilles, so he got to free agency, was hurt. He wasn't ready, and that limited and dampened his market. Obviously, Nick knew him from Indianapolis. The Eagles brought him in. You have those COVID rules, as you mentioned. You're allowed to have veteran players on the practice squad. Now he's completely healthy. I always talk about the offensive line. We're taping this on Thursday night. We got a team that had massive offensive line injuries. Carolina has massive issues. Teams all over this league have massive injuries. My guess is somebody was trying to pluck them off the Eagles practice squad. That's why they did what they did.
All right. And last thing, during this time frame, and I don't know if it's been 2 weeks or 3 weeks, have you been able to figure out who Mac McCain is? Because they had to cut him. They had to cut him again.
Yeah, by the way,
to make room for LaRaven Clark. You still weren't able to pick him out of a lineup.
I'm waiting to see if Denver claimed him off waivers, so I have to check that when we get off the air. They've been volleying back and forth with Mac McCain. Neither team will play him, but they keep picking him up off waivers. Last time the Eagles cut Mac, they said they wanted him back on the practice squad. If he got through waivers, he'll be back on the Eagles practice squad. We have to see if Denver picked him up again.
And you know for a fact the reason we like the guy is because his name is Mac McCain. Yeah. We are Mac and Mac. Yeah. He is our favorite guy. We might not be able to pick him out of a lineup, but he is our favorite guy just because of his last name.
We got to get Mac and Mac and Mac McCain.
Yes, during the offseason.
Yes.
We'll fly him in from Denver if we have to, but we will get him here on Birds 365 one day. Mac, man, that'll do it for us. Good show. It was good to hang out with you out here at Screwballs. Thanks to everybody who came out. This is a phenomenal place to watch the game on Sundays. If you're not getting on the JAKIB Media bus to go to the Eagle game, then you want to be watching it right here at Screwballs on Sundays. Coming up, you know where to find us each and every single morning, Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock. You get the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Thanks for watching this special bye-week edition of Birds 365.